Welcome to Back on the Stack, a cEDH channel. The group got together online again to record some spicy cEDH action. We hope you enjoy watching it as much as we enjoyed playing it. Please leave a comment letting us know what you thought about the gameplay. We are always taking advice to tune our games into the best production that we can. If you do enjoy the video, please like, subscribe, and share with friends. Now, let's get right into it and see what decks are being piloted tonight.
Howdy, my name is Levi and today I'm playing my pet deck, Omnath Lox's Creation. This deck has slowly evolved into a Jeskai deck with green in it. I'm playing one-card combos with Intuition and Spellseeker, while also getting to run Dockside and Emil as a win con. I think we all know why I kept this hand. It's kinda hard to turn down a turn 1 fish.
My name is GoldSaber Tim. I guess I'm like the Ed Big Daddy Roth or R. Crumb of the cEDH community. I create kind of lowbrow and funky illustrations and cartoons inspired by cEDH for the cEDH players that love them. I love drawing tokens, playmats, hand-drawn works, logos. I love doing this. I love playing the game, and I love drawing and creating art that is inspired by the game we love. So, yeah, I'm so thankful to be here and play some games with y'all today. Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun playing today. Got to unveil a new deck I've been pretty interested in, which is Thrasios and Rograk, mana and card advantage. It's really a lot of fun. This is inspired by Ryan and Zane's lists. I kept a hand that was 2 lands, one being Gaia's Cradle, Soul Ring, Mana Vault, Finale, Gilded Drake, and Pact. I kept this hand mostly because I'm pretty confident I could power out an early Finale for maybe a Seedborn Muse or something and just kind of take it from there. Now that I know this deck a lot better, if this is a hand I would have kept or should keep, but in this case I did, mostly for learning purposes. And it's fun to try some things on stream.
Tonight I'm piloting Atraxa, Grand Unifier. The game plan here is pretty simple. Count to 7 mana and start doing Atraxa ETB shenanigans. This hand was an easy keep because I have a decent amount of mana to start with, plus a turn 1 Bowmasters to hopefully start mowing down all the mana dorks.
Hey everybody, it's Eli, and tonight I'm piloting Kenrith the Return King. This is an evolution style deck trying to create infinite mana and sink it into Kenrith. Tonight I kept my first 7. This was a pretty spicy hand with a turn 1 fish and potentially turn 2 Dockside into Kinnan. I also have Luris as backup to let fish die and maybe bring it back, maybe be able to do something with getting Dockside back out of the graveyard if I'm able to kneel form it or something. So yeah, we'll see how this hand goes. I'm pretty excited about it.
We decided to show off some of GoldSaber's amazing art by all playing with one of the many playmats he has designed. Now, with introductions out of the way, Levi will kick us off. He draws and plays Tropical Island for turn. He casts Mystic Remora. In response, Eli pays 2 life to cast Mental Misstep. It resolves and counters Levi's fish. Levi passes the turn. GoldSaber draws and casts his commander, Rograk. He plays Gaia's Cradle for turn. He casts Soul Ring. He casts Mana Vault. He passes. J-Rock draws and plays Scrubland for turn. He casts Mana Crypt. He casts Arcane Signet. He passes. Eli draws and plays Volcanic Island for turn. He casts his own Mystic Remora. Levi calls him a bad person, and Eli passes the turn. Levi draws and shocks in Stomping Grounds for turn. He casts Talisman of Creativity. Fish triggers, and in response, J-Rock flashes in an Orcish Bowmasters. It ETBs and J-Rock pings Rograk for 1. Then he amasses an Orc army. Eli draws from Fish, Bowmaster triggers again, and J-Rock pings Eli for 1. Levi passes the turn. GoldSaber draws and plays Arid Mesa for turn. He pays a life, sacks it, and fetches up Volcanic Island to the battlefield. He exiles Elvish Spirit Guide from his hand to add 1 green to his mana pool to help cast his other commander, Thrasios, Triton Hero. He recasts Rograk. GoldSaber passes. In his upkeep, J-Rock loses his Crypt Roll and takes 3 damage. He draws and plays Bountiful Promenade for turn. He moves to combat and swings his Orc army at Eli. He takes 2 damage. In his second main phase, J-Rock casts Ranger Captain of Eos. In response, GoldSaber activates Thrasios, revealing and drawing Invasion of Ikoria. Bowmasters triggers and J-Rock pings Rograk again. Then Ranger Captain ETBs and J-Rock tutors Esper Sentinel to hand. He casts Esper Sentinel. J-Rock passes the turn. In his upkeep, Eli sacrifices Mystic Remora. He draws and plays Plateau for turn. He casts Dockside Extortionist. It ETBs and Eli creates 6 treasure tokens. He casts Kinnan, Bonder Prodigy. In response, Levi casts Red Elemental Blast. It resolves and Kinnan is countered. Eli casts Lurrus of the Dream Den. He then recasts Mystic Remora from his graveyard using Lurrus' ability. Esper triggers and J-Rock draws. Eli then passes the turn. Levi draws and plays Marsh Flats for turn. He pays 1 life, sacks it, and fetches Tundra to the battlefield. He casts his commander, Omnath, Locus of Creation. It ETBs and Levi draws a card. Bowmaster triggers and J-Rock pings Eli in the face for 1. Levi then passes the turn. GoldSaber draws and plays Bloodstained Mire for turn. He pays a life, sacks it, and fetches Tropical Island to the battlefield. He casts Invasion of Ikoria, where X equals 2. Fish and Esper both trigger, Eli draws from Fish, and Bowmaster triggers. J-Rock pings Thrasios for 1. Then J-Rock draws from Esper. Invasion resolves and GoldSaber gives it to Eli to defend. He then tutors up his own Dockside Extortionist to the battlefield. It ETBs and GoldSaber creates 5 treasure tokens. He casts Gilded Drake. It ETBs and he exchanges it with J-Rock's Bowmasters. GoldSaber passes the turn. In his upkeep, J-Rock loses his Crypt Roll and takes 3 damage. He draws and plays Tundra for turn. He casts Felwar Stone. Fish triggers and Eli draws. Bowmaster triggers and GoldSaber pings Esper Sentinel. He passes the turn. In his upkeep, Eli pays for Fish. He draws and plays Tropical Island for turn. He casts Neoform, sacrificing Dockside as an additional cost. In response, J-Rock casts Swan Song. Fish triggers and Eli draws. Bowmaster triggers and GoldSaber pings Lurrus for 1. Swan Song counters Neoform and Eli creates a very stylish GoldSaber art bird token. Eli moves to his end step and in response, Levi casts Noxious Revival, targeting his own Mystic Remora. Fish triggers and Eli declines to draw. The turn moves to Levi. Levi draws and casts Mystic Remora. Fish triggers and Eli draws. Bowmaster triggers and GoldSaber pings J-Rock in the face for 1. Levi passes the turn. GoldSaber draws and casts Finale of Devastation, where X equals 4. Both fishes trigger, Eli and Levi both draw. Bowmaster triggers for each, and GoldSaber sends both pings at Ranger Captain. In response to Finale on the stack, J-Rock casts Force of Negation. Both fishes trigger, Eli and Levi both draw. Bowmaster triggers for each draw, and GoldSaber pings Lurrus with the first one, and declares 1 ping at Ranger Captain for the second. In response to the Bowmaster target, J-Rock sacrifices Ranger Captain to its own ability. In response to the Ranger Captain activation, GoldSaber casts Pact of Negation, targeting Force of Negation. Both fishes trigger, Eli and Levi both draw, Bowmaster triggers, and GoldSaber sends 1 more damage at Lurrus for lethal, and 1 ping at Omnath. In response to Pact of Negation, Levi casts Fierce Guardianship, targeting the Finale of Devastation. Eli's fish triggers and he draws. Bowmaster triggers and GoldSaber pings Omnath a second time. Still in response, GoldSaber hard casts Mindbreak Trap, targeting all spells on the stack except for his Finale. Both fishes trigger, they both draw, and Bowmaster sends lethal pings at Omnath. Mindbreak Trap then exiles all targeted spells. Ranger Captain's ability then resolves. Finale of Devastation also resolves. GoldSaber tutors up for Rexian Metamorph to the battlefield. He has it enter as a copy of Dockside. He creates 6 additional treasures. He moves to combat and swings his 12/12 Orc army at Levi. In his second main phase, GoldSaber casts Bloom Tender. He then passes the turn. In his upkeep, J-Rock loses his Crypt Roll and takes 3 damage. He draws and casts his commander, Atraxa. It ETBs and he reveals the top 10 cards from his library. He puts to hand Diabolic Intent, Dark Ritual, Elvish Spirit Guide, Smothering Tithes, and Bayou. The rest get placed on the bottom of his library in a random order. He plays Bayou for turn. He casts Dark Ritual. Both fishes trigger, Eli and Levi both draw. Bowmaster triggers for each draw, and GoldSaber pings Atraxa with both. J-Rock casts Diabolic Intent, sacrificing his copy of Gilded Drake as an additional cost. Both fishes trigger, Eli and Levi both draw. Bowmaster triggers for each draw, and GoldSaber pings Atraxa with both pings. J-Rock then tutors a card to hand. He casts Chrome Mox. Both fishes trigger, Eli and Levi both draw. Bowmaster triggers for each draw, and GoldSaber pings Atraxa with both again. Chrome Mox ETBs and he imprints Smothering Tithes. He exiles Elvish Spirit Guide from his hand, adding 1 green to his pool, and pays 2 life to help cast Phyrexian Metamorph. But in response, Levi casts Snap, targeting GoldSaber's Metamorph. Fish triggers, Eli draws, and Bowmaster sends 1 damage for lethal at Atraxa. Then Snap resolves and Levi untaps 2 lands. Still in response, Levi casts Path to Exile, targeting GoldSaber's Dockside. Fish triggers, Eli draws, Bowmaster triggers, and GoldSaber pings his own copy of Bowmasters. Phyrexia Metamorph then ETBs, and with all good targets now removed from play, J-Rock has it become a copy of Sol Ring. GoldSaber then decides that he no longer wants to play Magic in the Dark and finds a side lamp. Then J-Rock passes the turn. In his upkeep, Eli sacrifices Fish. He draws and plays Mana Confluence for turn. He casts Dark Ritual. Fish triggers and Levi draws. In response, GoldSaber activates Thrasios and reveals and draws Kinnan to hand. Then Eli adds 3 black to his mana pool. He casts Reanimate, targeting Dockside in his grave. Fish triggers and Levi draws. Then Docksiders return to the battlefield, and Eli creates 11 treasure tokens. Eli casts Displacer Kitten. In response, Levi casts Lightning Bolt, targeting Dockside. In response, Eli channels Otawara, targeting his own Dockside. Lightning Bolt then fizzles. Eli recasts Dockside. In response, GoldSaber decides to crack his last 2 treasures. Then Dockside ETBs, and Eli creates an additional 9 treasures. He casts his commander, Kenrith the Return King. He cast Eladamri's Call. Fish triggers and Levi draws. Kitten triggers and Eli targets Dockside. In response to the Kitten trigger, Levi casts Mindbreak Trap for its alternative casting cost, targeting Eladamri's Call. In response, Eli casts Pact of Negation. Fish triggers, Levi draws. Kitten triggers, and Eli flickers Dockside, creating an additional 9 treasure tokens. Pact counters Mindbreak Trap, and Eladamri's Call resolves. Eli tutors Emil the Blessed to hand. He casts Emil. Eli activates Emil's ability and flickers Dockside. He presents a loop, creating infinite treasure tokens. He then activates Kenrith's 4th ability over and over until he has drawn his entire deck. He casts Thassa's Oracle. With his devotion to blue greater than the cards in his library, Eli wins the game. GoldSaber was so much fun to hang out with, we decided to shuffle up, re-randomize seed order, and try again.
Game 2, I went first. Kept this, I think this was my first 7. I had a Worldly Tutor for a Dockside or a Kinnan, and I had to transmute a Trophy Mage if I needed to find a Basalt Monolith. So in that case, I just thought I would keep a hand that prioritized an early Dockside and then had a Seaborn Muse as a payoff.
In Game 2, I decided to keep this very unconventional hand because of the Burgeoning. The card does not see a lot of play in our format, but for a deck that relies on making a lot of mana, I figured I would try it out. Here you can see that I have a mitt full of lands, so I decided to ramp up and hope for the best.
Howdy, Levi again, and the mulligans for Omnath tend to be pretty simple. You look for card draw, and you worry about the mana later. That being said, turn 1 Darcy into turn 2 Sylvan Library should do the trick.
In Game 2, I kept a hand that would allow me to potentially get a turn 1 D-Tutor into a turn 2 Dockside. Hopefully the Dockside count gets up so I can get a turn 2 Consecrated Sphinx as well, but we'll see how it goes.
With opening hands decided, GoldSaber will kick us off. He draws and casts his commander, Rograk. He plays Volcanic Island for turn. He casts Mystic Remora. He passes the turn. J-Rock draws and plays Flooded Strand for turn. He pays a life, sacks it, and fetches Savannah to the battlefield. He casts Burgeoning. Fish triggers and GoldSaber draws. He passes the turn. Levi draws and plays Marsh Flats for turn. Burgeoning triggers and J-Rock puts Breeding Pool into play tapped. Levi pays a life, sacks Marsh Flats, and fetches Badlands to the battlefield. He casts Dragon's Rage Channeler. He passes. Eli draws and plays City of Brass for turn. Burgeoning triggers and J-Rock puts Morphic Pool into play. Eli casts Mox Diamond. Fish triggers and GoldSaber draws. Mox Diamond ETBs and he discards Scalding Tarn. He casts Demonic Tutor. Fish triggers and GoldSaber draws. Then Eli tutors a card to hand and passes the turn. In his upkeep, GoldSaber pays for Fish. He draws and plays Verdant Catacombs for turn. Burgeoning triggers and J-Rock puts Passasia Who Endures into play. GoldSaber pays a life, sacks his Verdant Catacombs, and fetches Tropical Island to the battlefield. He casts Worldly Tutor. He puts Kinnan, Bonder Prodigy, to the top of his library. He moves to his end step, discards to hand size, and passes the turn. J-Rock draws and casts Tainted Pact. Fish triggers and GoldSaber draws. J-Rock then exiles cards from his library until he hits Delighted Halfling. He casts Delighted Halfling. He passes the turn. Levi draws and plays Scalding Tarn for turn. He pays a life, sacks it, and fetches Tropical Island to the battlefield. He casts Sylvan Library. Fish triggers and GoldSaber draws. Darcy triggers and Levi surveils, leaving the card on top. He passes the turn. Eli draws and simply passes. In his upkeep, GoldSaber sacrifices Fish. He draws and plays Mana Confluence for turn. He casts Dockside Extortionist. It ETBs and he creates 3 treasure tokens. He casts Kinnan, Bonder Prodigy. He passes. J-Rock draws and plays Ancient Tomb for turn. He casts his commander, Atraxa. It ETBs and he reveals the top 10 cards from his library. He puts to hand Bountiful Promenade, Ephemerate, and Elvish Spirit Guide. The rest get placed on the bottom of his library in a random order, and he passes the turn. In his draw step, Levi's Sylvan Library triggers. He draws 3 cards, keeps them all, and pays 8 life. He casts Mystic Remora. Darcy triggers, he surveils one, putting Command Tower into the graveyard. He passes the turn. Eli draws and casts Dockside Extortionist. It ETBs and he creates 5 treasure tokens. He casts Ranger Captain. It ETBs and he tutors Esper Sentinel to hand. He casts Esper Sentinel. He passes the turn. GoldSaber draws and plays Windswept Heath for turn. Burgeoning triggers and, in response, Levi casts Path to Exile, targeting Atraxa. Esper triggers and Eli draws. Darcy triggers and Levi surveils, putting Intuition into his graveyard. Atraxa is returned to the command zone. Then, J-Rock puts Bountiful Promenade into play. GoldSaber pays a life, sacks Windswept Heath, and fetches Taiga to the battlefield. He casts Seedborn Muse. He casts his other commander, Thrasios. He passes. J-Rock draws and shocks in a Watery Grave. He exiles Elvish Spirit Guide from his hand to add 1 green to his mana pool, and recasts Atraxa. In response, GoldSaber activates Thrasios, putting Wooded Foothills into play tapped. Atraxa ETBs and J-Rock reveals the top 10 cards from his library. He puts to hand Rhystic Study, Kinnan, Demonic Tutor, Gaia's Cradle, and Arcane Signet. J-Rock casts Ephemerate, targeting Atraxa. Esper and Fish both trigger, and Eli and Levi both draw. In response, GoldSaber casts Deflecting Swat, changing the Ephemerate target from Atraxa to Delighted Halfling. Esper and Fish both trigger, Eli and Levi both draw. Halfling is then flickered, and J-Rock moves to his end step. He discards to hand size and passes the turn. In Levi's upkeep, GoldSaber pays a life, sacks his Wooded Foothills, and fetches Breeding Pool onto the battlefield, shocking it in. Still in upkeep, Levi pays for his fish. In his draw step, Sylvan Library triggers, and Levi draws 3 cards. He keeps them all and loses 8 life. Unfortunately missing a land drop, he moves to his end step. In response, GoldSaber activates Thrasios, putting City of Traders into play tapped. Levi discards to hand size and passes the turn. Eli draws and plays Wooded Foothills for turn. Burgeoning triggers and J-Rock puts Gaia's Cradle into play. Eli moves to his end step, and in response, GoldSaber activates Kinnan. He looks at the top 5 and puts Devoted Druid into play. Then the turn moves to GoldSaber. GoldSaber draws and casts Invasion of Ikoria, where X equals 4. Esper and Fish both trigger, and Eli and Levi both draw. In response, Eli casts Silence. In response, GoldSaber hard casts Mindbreak Trap. Fish triggers and Levi draws. Mindbreak Trap exiles Silence. Then Invasion resolves. GoldSaber gives it to Eli to defend, and he tutors Phyrexian Metamorph to the battlefield. He has it become a copy of Dockside. In response, Eli cracks his treasure. Then GoldSaber creates 5 treasure tokens. He casts Transmute Artifact. Fish triggers and he pays for it. In response, Eli sacks his Ranger Captain. In response to that, Levi casts Worldly Tutor to help Eli draw a card. Esper triggers and Eli draws. Darcy triggers and Levi surveils. Levi then tutors Simian Spirit Guide to the top of his library. Ranger Captain's ability then resolves. Transmute Artifact resolves, and GoldSaber tutors Basalt Monolith to the battlefield. It ETBs and he sacrifices Phyrexian Metamorph. He then demonstrates a loop of creating infinite colorless mana through Kinnan and Basalt. He activates Thrasios until he has drawn his entire deck and put all of his lands into play tapped. Because the table is now under a Ranger Captain crack, he sculpts his hand of 7, discards to hand size, and passes the turn with no cards in his library. In his upkeep, J-Rock's Ephemerate rebounds, and he casts it for free. Esper and Fish both trigger, and in response, GoldSaber flashes in Endurance. In response, Eli casts Enlightened Tutor. Fish triggers and Levi draws. Eli tutors Mana Vault to the top of his library. Still in response, J-Rock casts Snap, targeting Thrasios. Fish triggers and Levi draws. In response, GoldSaber cracks Emergent Zone, allowing him to now cast spells at Flash. Thrasios then bounces to his hand, and he recasts it. Endurance resolves, putting all of GoldSaber's graveyard back into his library. He then casts an overloaded Cyclonic Rift. It's at this point that the board knows they have no chance to even come close to stopping GoldSaber with his board state. He tells the table that when the turn gets back to him, he will cast Finale of Devastation, where X will equal a preposterous amount. He will then swing for lethal. The table decides to concede, and GoldSaber wins the game. A very special thank you goes to GoldSaber, not only for taking time out of his schedule to play with us, but for also designing our sick logo. In Game 1, Eli's card draw was too much for anyone to be able to stop him from going off on his turn. In Game 2, GoldSaber showcased the power of having Thrasios and Seedboard on the battlefield at the same time. We hope you enjoyed watching the production. Feel free to check out the deck links listed below, and we will see you back on the stack.